topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. And you might be saying, okay, you're excited every Tuesday anyway. But today, I'm more excited. And the reason I'm going to share that with you is because of you. Yes, listeners, it's because of you. Our show on Listen Notes, if you go check it out, we're in top 10% globally, not just the US. Globally, we are in the top 10% of podcasts, the most listened to podcasts. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who listens, who gives back the feedback. You are just amazing. You're awesome. And I want to thank you for being part of our Beyond Confidence family. And as part of that, I want to invite you, I want to challenge you to go live your life beyond the routine. Go do something more. Not only achieve confidence, but take one step further. Make your life better. Make somebody else's life better. So important that you live your life the way you want to live and also help somebody else live their life or help them in such a way that it can make it better. So I'm going to bring out our kindness challenge today before. The reason being that it's because of your kindness. Not only you, but each and every listener's kindness that our podcast is ranking up higher and higher. So if you love listening to our podcast, leave us a review and let's keep on climbing up so that more people listen. We can create more impact. So make sure that you take that 1 hour of your time and go help someone. Spread it out, whether it's a smile or a cheer, and have that spirit, that giving spirit, tiny bit of your time, tiny bit of your energy, and let's make somebody else's life better. And also want to share that, because of you, we are able to help so many entrepreneurs across the globe. So thank you again for buying our books. If you have not, I again invite you to get our book, especially Expert to Influencer, that will help you become the influencer, not just the numbers and likes, but somebody who can create an impact. And the Entrepreneur's Garden is going to help you set up, whether you're an entrepreneur, a professional, or anyone. It will help you build a relationship with core things like money, people, yourself, and so many other things that can change your life. So the books will not only help you, and it will help us help entrepreneurs because we take part of the profits and share it out. So let's bring in our guest today, Dr. Julie Burke.
Well, hello there. Very happy to be here today, Divya. Congratulations on your podcast success.
Well, thank you. It happens because of the audience and the guest, and one, because, we all come together. It's not one person that makes anything successful. And I always say that if you're just kind of lifting a finger, right? A finger doesn't have as much power as a fist. And I'm not saying that fist is like you go punch someone. It's just to demonstrate the power of the fist that, when you come together, there's so much power to it. So Julie, tell us as to when you were a child, did you have somebody leave a mark on you, or did you have any event or a fun stuff that still stands out fresh for you today?
Oh my gosh, I think back to 1972. I was a little girl, 11 years old. It was in Prince George's County, which is the 10th largest school district in America. And at that time, they had a completely segregated school system. There were
Mm,
schools for blacks, there were schools for whites, there was teachers that only taught in one or the other, and two different school boards set up. And the courts at that time said Prince George's County needed to segregate, that the two school systems were not equal. And I was in the um, neighborhood with the white kids, and there was a PTA meeting, and it was only my father and my mother who stood up in front of that PTA meeting and said they supported desegregating the school systems. And I was
mm.
very proud of them for taking that extremely unpopular approach, and all the kids that walked into that school. That was not an easy time those years for anybody. And so I understood, though, it was all for the greater good because we need to let everybody have a chance. And I really believe that the steps that were taken in the 60s and the 70s would really help with the racial disparity in America. And so for me, hearing my parents speak up, even though they knew it would be hard on us poor kids, that was just such an impact for me.
Wow, that is impactful. And it really helps because here's the thing, when we look at human beings,
Mhm,
what I look at is that everybody has pains, aspirations, everybody wants to be happy.
mhm.
We're all bound together by so many commonalities. And as you mentioned, it left a mark on you. So tell us, how did that shape you? Like, you know, being sort of siloed, right? People not walking with you, as you said, or kids, because kids can be sometimes mean.
Oh
How did
my.
it affect you? And
Um,
how did that carry with you in your teen years?
Beyond the teen years, it's this idea that I don't like bullies, and I am beyond confident when it comes up to speaking up about situations where I feel people aren't being treated fair. And it goes all the
Mm.
way up to the patent office as a 20-year veteran there, noticing that the American inventors are not being treated fair by the patent office, and knowing that employees of the patent office are not being treated fair. And I have a particular doozy of a story I'd share with your audience at some point, but it's just very important to have that confidence to when something's not right, even if the stakes are high, or especially if the stakes are high, somebody in the room has to stand up and say something. If not, it just continues. And I
Hmm.
was really glad I was able to do that, that I learned that from my parents' example, and beyond all that, just after that, just moving on, realizing I could no longer work at that institution under those situations, under
So
pro.
let's kind of
Yeah.
rewind back a little bit so
Mhm.
we can get to that point.
Okay.
So as you grew up, what were your interests?
Oh my gosh, I really liked, you'd call it traditional girl stuff, fiber arts and quilting and sewing and crocheting and cooking. And I know that these days they want to get women into technology areas, STEM. It's all very, very important. But, if you peel back the layer, there's a lot of chemistry in cooking. There's a lot of math in making a quilt. And the example I've really been thinking about lately is crocheting. And that's very similar to making polymers. That's very similar to the way DNA molecules are made, stitch by stitch. It's amino acid, it's nucleic acid by nucleic acid. And when we make proteins linear, I went on to become a biochemist. When we make proteins, it's a linear chain of 21 different amino acids that can be arranged in all sorts of different orders to make different patterns, to make different proteins. And I learned a lot about designing patterns from fiber art.
Mm. And that's the thing. Just kind of something is there. There's no reason to shun it. It's about taking what we have and building upon it. And so many times what people think is that, like, you just have to build those things to the ground and build it from ground up, it's not necessary. Just kind of seeing like, what's great, keep building on it, and then what's not good that can be improved. So you talked about being a biochemist. I'm a biochemist by trade as well, so totally get about the proteins and the DNA molecules that you're talking about. So as you graduated with your biochemistry degree, did you go in the biosciences or?
That's a really good question. After I got my bachelor's degree from Johns Hopkins, I went and worked just with the bachelor's degree as a research assistant in biotech labs in Boston for 5 years. And that was a very interesting time. It was the 80s where everything was starting. And I thought at that point, maybe I could get a PhD. Maybe I could go on. And that was maybe one of my first reinventions, right? I was accepted into the PhD program in London and 5 years worked there in the labs and received a British PhD and came back after that to Johns Hopkins University for a postdoc at their School of Medicine Department of Biochemistry.
Well, congratulations, Dr. Julie. And so during those years, because being in a lab can be very exhausting. And to this day, I remember, like, one time I was very, very frustrated with some of my experiments. And my mentor told me, who told you that this is just a one-time shot? What does research mean? It is you search, you go back again, and you keep on searching it. So that stuck with me. And there's so many things that we develop being in the lab. And what would you say were your key takeaways or key lessons that you learned from that life?
Oh gosh, two. One, the Boston community and the London community was extraordinarily diverse, a lot of international students, a whole new environment. And I really enjoyed the mix of everything, the excitement of it, all of that. And my PhD thesis advisor, he had a saying that, well, he had two sayings. One he said was, sometimes you're the driver and sometimes you're the pedestrian. That was his one saying. His other one he'd say is, science and art are different in the sense that art is a creation that stands alone, one snapshot in time. And if that particular art is not made, it may never be made. But science, people will push the frontier back. And if you don't do the experiment, somebody else will come along with enough grant research funding and we'll do the next one and the next one and the next one. So there's a lot of repetition in science. There's a lot of uniqueness in art, which is a great tie for patents because patents are considered the useful arts. They're not considered science.
Interesting. So after you finished your postdoc, where did your life take you?
I was working on my postdoc. This was in the 1990s, and realizing I did not have what it would take to become an academic professor. I didn't have the research papers, portfolios, and there was a real glut of PhDs at that time in my field. And I thought I'd try to use my degree at the patent office. I applied to become a patent examiner in 1995.
I see. And so that's a big transition going from, so two different fields. What made you decide to go for that?
Well, the postdoc, endless series of postdocs was becoming less and less attractive. The 2-year contracts, no health care, no benefits. I wanted a real job with some security. And for sure, the patent office has great benefits, and I was happy for that. But my father also was a career civil servant. My sister was a career civil servant. You're able to do things in the government that are of importance, affect missions, make changes, empower people that I really would not have been able to affect as a bench scientist someplace. That attracted me.
Makes sense. So now you are in the US Trademark and Patent Office. So tell us your journey over there.
I joined up in 1995 and I moved to Virginia. The offices were in Alexandria, Virginia, and well, at that time, Arlington, Virginia. And I started as a patent examiner. And the patent office is interesting in that you become an examiner and join an art unit. because everything's considered art there. Was in the art unit for cancer immunology and diagnosis. And so I'd try to work on detection methods and cancer treatment methods with a specialty in the immunology area.
Mhm.
And that would be individual patent applications would cross my desk, and I would try to assess whether what I saw in front of me was novel and unobvious. Were there adequate examples? Do we have written description? Are the claims clear? And it's a job where there's a lot of reading and writing and sending out notices requiring from the inventor more information, more support changes. And then at some point, the application becomes allowable and issue a US patent. What's interesting at the patent office is we don't just have one, we have about 9,000 because each examiner, the trained up ones, the primary examiners, issue patents all by themselves with very little oversight. So it's a pretty interesting position to be giving out government rights, individual employees giving out government rights without upper signatures on things.
So tell us, how does that process work? Let's say somebody has a patent.
Oh, patents are so important. I love talking about patents. Somebody would have an idea, an invention, and there's probably four ways to protect your intellectual property. You've got copyrights, patents, trademarks, you've got trade secrets, is where you keep it to yourself. But if you had a utility patent idea, a new method, a new product, and this is what I love about inventors, they're always trying to solve problems and improve the world, not just for themselves and not just to
Mhm.
make money, because most patents don't make money, but to
Right.
improve human conditions.
Yeah. So now they have it. Like, how do they go about it? And can you also tell us the difference between a trademark and patent? Because there's so many people who don't know about it.
Oh, this is so it is the US Patent and Trademark Office. Trademark's a smaller side of the office, but it's probably the one people are most familiar with. And this is um, the printed material, the design, the logo. I'm looking at your screen right now, and I'm seeing all sorts of images that have probably been trademarked. And I worked in the patent side of the office, which is more for products. There are
Hmm.
design patents that are looking at the ornamental aspects of things, but patents are a product or a process or an improvement on a product that open your bathroom uh, medicine cabinet, and almost everything in there would have been patented inside the group that I worked with, biotech, chemical, pharmacy area, all the new drugs that we see.
Right. And why would you say that the patent process is important to American economy?
Oh, the patent process it is extraordinarily important to the American economy. A patent is gives the inventor the security, confidence, in fact, to go out and start a business, go out and get supplies, hire employees, go out and seek for some venture capital, and for the investors, if a new startup company has patents, they feel more confident to give money to the company to help raise up money to help move things forward. Patents are very important in that regard.
That makes sense because think about there's so many copycats and the
Mm.
knockoffs
Yeah,
that somebody comes up with an idea and it's so much easier to copy rather than sit and invent. And if you have a patent, it makes it so much easier to be the standalone in the market because if somebody's trying to copy you, you can go after them legally, correct?
that is all correct. The patent is a right to go after infringers. We've been in the last 10, 15 years having real issues with the patent system in America. It's tipping into dysfunction. There's been court decisions and procedural situations created by the patent office that has reduced the certainty people have in patents. And a U.S. inventors organization is startup inventors, small inventors banding together, trying to ask more from the patent office. They want more certainty in their patents. It's hard to believe that your property rights could just disappear overnight the way they have been.
Mm. So, okay, so you've mentioned that. Before we go deeper into that, can you share, like, okay, let's say you worked on the biotech side. Somebody comes up, it can be somebody, a molecule from a university, and a small company buys the rights to it. How do they go about filing for a patent, and like what does the process look like?
Okay, that's a very good question. Um, Most of the applications in my technology center involved patent agents or patent attorneys. There certainly is a
Mhm.
process where an individual inventor can come to the patent office and file. And the patent office, we call those pro se applicants that do not hire an attorney or an agent. There is a art unit that tries to work with the pro se applicants. But for something as important and complex as a new drug, they most likely would reach out and find a law firm to represent them. And then it would be writing a disclosure, deciding what subject matter to claim, rounding up the latest material in that field to say, this is what other people have done and mine is different because, and that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
finding those documents, maybe there'd be some drawings, chemical structures, and in the biotech area, there's almost always DNA sequence listings or protein sequence links, and those would all need to be gathered up and then presented at the office. That's called the patent application.
And then how long does it take? Let's say now you have submitted. What happens next since you have worked on the inside? If
Oh,
you're
I
at
mean,
liberty to share.
every step from front to back. And there are a few programs where applicants can expedite examination of their patent application. But in general, the normal process is it might wait in a queue for maybe a year and a half, 2 years before it gets picked up by a patent examiner. And they would work on the case and prepare a preliminary report, an office action, and mail that out. And there's always time periods here. It comes on out with a 3-month time period, extendable for 6, but you've got to get back to them. You can't just let it lapse in any way.
Mm.
And then work with the attorneys and the inventors and see what else is needed for this to get it up over the hurdle to become a patent and respond back. And most inventions take 2 or 3 go backs back and forth. Some cases take many years, many years.
Mm.
And at some point, you could come to the patent office or on Zoom, like we are now, to have an interview with your examiner and talk matters over. That's often the quickest way to try to resolve differences as to what we need to submit, what we have to do here. And then at that point, the patent examiner can determine if it's patentable. In the old days, we'd call that blue slip it because the slip was actually a blue slip. Send out a notice of allowance and pay the issue fee. And on some upcoming Tuesday, your patent issues with a unique patent number, and there it is.
Oh, that's good to know because so many times what happens is the inventors are thinking about like, okay, let me get a patent on it and then I can start a company. So it's very important, especially if you're planning to start up a new company based on a novel idea or novel product or novel change that you're bringing about in an existing product, that you account for that time. Otherwise, it can be very disheartening and discouraging. So once you factor in that time, it makes it much easier to have a building the other infrastructure for whatever you're planning to do. So now the patent is issued. Are there like yearly, like, usually what time period is given for the patents?
These days, it's 20 years from date of filing would be the
Hmm.
patent term given. And at periodic times through the life of the patent, there's maintenance fees that can be paid. And those would be paid out at certain intervals to keep your patent from expiring.
I see. So tell us, like, you have done a lot of scientific studies in molecular biology. So what's the link between the fiber arts and your scientific studies?
Oh my gosh, it's this idea of complexity. The more stitches you have in your crocheting or in your knitting, or the more patterns you have for your quilt and the different ways that you put them together, makes different, more complex art products. In the same way with proteins, the way
Hmm.
those can be created and the a wonderful way, it's literally icing on the cake. After the protein is made with the amino acid chains and folds up to what it's supposed to be like, there's a whole glycosylation process where sugars are placed on. We talked about 21 amino acids in a linear array that can be, those amino acids can be mixed and matched, and different orders could happen to create different three-dimensional structures down the road. But the sugars, oh my gosh, the extent of sugars and monosugars and disugars, they don't link together in a linear fashion. They have the ability to branch. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, you're trying to, and they can attach to different proteins at different places and create different shapes for the immune system to recognize, different shapes for the messengers to work. So it would be it's fascinating to think how nature came up with this incredible diversity of shapes, and each of those shapes, its structure and function. Those shapes have functions, they can impart functions, and tiny changes in those shapes can lead to diseases that we can work towards curing, identifying and curing, finding a drug that might be
Absolutely. So let's say, like, there is a disease that's kind of going on, and somebody has a molecule that would help a lot of people. And now they're trying to get a patent on that. So, and that's the reason I kind of brought it up, like, how
Mhm.
usually, like, for sugars, it could be glyco, and then we're talking proteins, so glycoproteins, and there's so many other molecules. So, is there a process where people can get it expedited in situation where it may be helpful to other people?
Well, the patent office has a new program for cancer immunology patents that can
Mm,
be expedited. You can get your patent in a much quicker way. Patents are territorial. So the drug that's patented in America there's no patent right on a US patent that would extend across the borders in any way. And downstream from the patent office, there's a lot of probably beyond the scope of this call and certainly beyond the scope of my expertise, an awful lot of talk out in the press about the FDA and drug regulations and drug pricing and all of that.
right,
That's
right.
way downstream, but it really, the patent is what encourages people to spend the money on the research in the first place.
Very true, very true. So, going back to your journey in the patent office, you had alluded to some discrepancies, some things happening. So, would you like to share that?
Yes, I would like to share a story today. Um, I'd like to start with the female inventor, Maria Beasley, back in 1880, and she invented the collapsible life raft. And her idea was that when a ship is sinking, lifeboats take up a lot of space, and there might not be room on the lifeboats for all the passengers. But if we had some collapsible metal frame life rafts stored away, there would then be room for everybody on that ship to get off. In 2014, I think Maria Beasley would be surprised to see how the patent office took her ideas about saving people from a sinking ship and used that concept in a team building game. And it seemed to me not to be a team building game when I was called in. It was like a mandatory sit down meeting with all the quality assurance specialists that oversaw the chemical biotech pharmacy area of the patent office. And we were sat down for this team building exercise and given the scenario that there's a ship sinking, there's 15 people on the ship sinking, and the life raft only has room for 9. So as a team, we had to figure out who to pick up that would be pulled out and thrown overboard to drown. And as I was looking at this, I was just like, this seems kind of weird. And I watched as my team immediately picked out President Obama as the very first person on that 15-person ship that they would throw over and sacrifice. They didn't like him, and even though he was then the sitting president, which struck me as odd. And then my team immediately launched on to, oh, Senator Mitt Romney, over into the brink, whoosh, just like that. And I realized my dad had told me something. If I was ever in a sticky management situation, I could always take notes. So I just sat there quietly and hoped they didn't see me, and I just started taking notes. That's when they found the Jewish rabbi, and they thought the Jewish rabbi should go over to drown. That religious people don't do anything important. And right after that, they found the Catholic priest who went right overboard to drown. And their rationale, because not just picking who to drown, but explain why they drowned, why
Mm,
they said that if he was truly religious, he's going to go to heaven anyway, so it wouldn't really matter if he drowned.
mm.
And then my team, all this was accompanied with lots of laughter. They were having a heck of a good time with this little exercise. And my team picked the Muslim cleric to go overboard. And they said if the religious people were truly religious, why, they would sacrifice themselves for the good of the group. They would just volunteer to go drown. And that's when I started kind of freaking out. At the campus, just a year prior, we had a high-level esteemed attorney leave the commissioner's office on the top floor of the Madison building and run over to those low glass railings and try to throw himself overboard. He was rescued. Group director rescued him. The EMTs come in front of everybody, walk him out in cufflinks, and we heard he was put into a psych ward. And when he got out, he did that. And then just a couple weeks after that, and this would be about a year before I was playing the lifeboat game, my father chose to end his life by drowning.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I thought I was over it, Divya. It was over a year ago. I really thought I was over it. But while I was there in that room, I was thinking, gosh, maybe, because you never know the trail that leaves in a family. And I was trying to figure it out, and I thought, well, maybe in a way he thought he was doing it for the good of the group, so my mother could wouldn't have to spend her time caring for him, and she could visit the grandkids and travel. And I was trying to wrap this all around, and I was still taking notes, and then I was interrupted by my supervisor saying, well, let's throw the pregnant woman overboard as a 2-for-1. And I just snapped. I don't know, the cruelty of that. That's not what Maria Beasley was thinking about when she built those life rafts back there. And then my colleague down the table, who was the Core-Wide SAWS program lead, leaned in and said, hey, Julie, you're not saying anything to be on our team. To be on our team, you need to find somebody to kill here. And I remember something else my dad told me at that point. He said, whenever you're in a sticky situation with management, you can always ask a question. And I just stood up and I gathered my papers up, all shaky hands, and I said, am I the only one here who finds this game offensive? And by asking it that way, I learned more. I learned, yes, I was the only one. And I trucked on out and road tested every single administrative remedy inside that patent office to try to let folks understand that this may not be appropriate team building material. It's kind of like anti-team building material.
And then what happened?
Oh, I'm diligent. We tried the union. We tried my supervisor's supervisor. This is an assistant deputy commissioner. I went into her office and explained to her a day later, I really didn't appreciate that game. And she cut me right off and said, it's standardly used across campuses. It's used in schools. This is a standard game, Julie, and no one else was offended. And I explained to her about the significance of drowning and family members, and I explained all of that. And I kind of also raised the Secret Service issues of government employees trying to suggest killing elected officials. That's kind of a problem too. But what it came back to, and the many reiterations of the same tale to many levels of management, is that nobody else was offended. It's too bad I was personally, sensitive, a little sensitive. And because I am not Black or Muslim or Catholic or Jewish, I'm not even pregnant. I had no grounds to file a complaint. I was not an effective person there. So after that, I contacted Human Resources, and I just sent a message to them to say, I've got a workplace situation. I have a union rep. I'd like to just talk to you about it, right? I like solving problems. To me, this seemed like some sort of administrative problem. And before I even met my human resource specialist, she sent me an email explaining how she understood that I had been found it all offensive, that these games are commonly used as team building games in universities and companies. And that ageism, sexism, and racism are merely debatable values with no right or wrong answers. And then she attached to that 10 other team building games they pulled off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Horrific. In my mind, and I am no DEI specialist, but in my mind, stereotyping people by their demographics and treating them, it just seems like picking out people, that sort of thing seemed odd. But one of the games that they sent me was another lifeboat game with, again, gender. The gender alone was horrific. The women were all either nurses or labeled as teachers or prostitutes or nuns. And there was an 8-year-old crippled boy that went right over into the brink. And in that game, they had Nazis and Jews. And
Yeah.
the anti-Semitic comments were shocking.
Mm. And I can see, Julie, your viewpoint. And the key is that we continue extending kindness to everyone, anyone, everyone involved, because sometimes people know not what they're doing. And the key is that rather than judging anyone, we can continue, as you're educating and sharing, we can leave it up to the audience to see, what they make out of it. And you're presenting the facts here. And so I know that after that, you did leave. And can you tell us, why is it important to have more female inventors as we draw to a close?
Understandable. More female inventors, more female supervisors, more female people who feel empowered, and beyond confidence in trying to make positive changes for the world. More of that is necessarily needed. Everywhere women get educated, the economics of those countries go up. Women are a real underutilized powerhouse for economic changes. And the kinds of things that women invent are the kinds of things that help women's lives, and women and children's lives. And so those are some of the reasons why I really support any kind of inventorship for women.
Mm-hmm. No, that definitely makes sense. So tell us, what is it that you do right now, and how do you support people?
I've heard that we start our career with a job, we get a career, we get a profession, and then we get a passion. And after having left the patent office, my passion is to try to help the patent office become a better place, trying to illuminate areas in which, and I do that by writing and speaking and trying to talk to the patent bar associations about where things could be improved in patents. And I've been on annual meetings where they've asked me to talk about various issues. I think that's all very important.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And if people wanted to reach out to you, where could they connect with you?
I am on ipqualitypro@gmail.com, or also I'm at LinkedIn under Julie Burke or IP Quality Pro.
Oh, fantastic. So listeners, if you are thinking of, starting something new or have a product and want to know more about it, Dr. Julie is there to support you. Connect with her, contact her. Thank you, Dr. Julie, for providing us so many nuggets and sharing your story.
Thank you, Divya. Very much enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners, for being part of our show, because you are the life and soul of the show. Without you, the show would not be possible. And thank you, Juan, for making the show possible. Until next time, be well and take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Park shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyapark.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyapark.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.